Yo guys, welcome back to Kempf Fitness Pro. I'm John, and this video is a little bit of an update on the healing arm and a little bit of the rehab protocol that I'm doing for it, just to help improve the recovery process so I can start to progress my training, which I'm very excited about. So I just wanted to show you guys in this video what I'm doing for a little bit of physical therapy, quote unquote. First thing that I'm going to do is do a little bit of gua sha, and this is easily translated as scraping. All you really need is something that has an edge, and then some kind of oil, butter or coconut oil. This is massage oil that I made with some lavender and geranium from my plants, as well as coconut oil and sweet almond oil as the oil in here to go with it. So this is just what I've got on hand that I'm going to use. And we don't really need much oil at all. All we're trying to do is just provide a little bit of a sliding surface for the blade. This is a stone blade. Got a bunch of different ones. You can use a butter knife, you can use a lid or a spoon. Also works well, but I just put a little dab there. You can see there's the incision, broken radius, titanium plate, and 10 screws through the bones. And the main thing that I'm dealing with, or two main things I should say, is a lack of range of motion going into wrist extension. That's all I've got, and that's pretty difficult right there. I feel a lot of impingement on the back side of my wrist. So that's one of the things I'm working to improve, restore. And then the other major point of focus is some nerve pain that I have through my median nerve. Your median nerve runs up the arm and innervates part of the hand. It innervates the thumb and the first and second fingers, as well a little bit of your palm here. So that whole area for me is a bit numb and tingly sensation. It was really bad coming out of surgery. In fact, extremely painful. Now the nerve pain has settled, but it's still definitely pins and needles in these three fingers, specifically more so the kind of inside of these two fingers. That's where I feel it the most. It's not as bad on this side, not as bad on this side, but really noticeable through the middle of these two fingers. And then down the palm, a little bit in the thumb yet, and a little bit in the palm, but mainly in the pointer and the middle finger. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to come in and restore tissue quality, improve circulation, and ultimately try to free up some space for those tissues and nerves to slide through there, because this scar is very tight, very, very tight. The tissue around it is just glued down. It's hard. So I'm going in there with the blade on the side of the incision, next to the incision, and just trying to get in there and just wiggle it around a little bit. Just try to get everything to become a little bit more malleable. Just improve the malleability, the pliability of that tissue, so stuff can flow between the layers of tissue more effectively. So you can pretty much do anything you want here as far as scraping. There's techniques that you can utilize for specific outcomes. There's books and books on gua sha, and Graston is something that'll be referred to in the West. But ultimately, from the most simplistic perspective, we're just coming in here and we're just mushing everything around a little bit to try to improve that tissue quality, pliability, while also promoting circulation and blood and lymphatic flow. So all of those things are going to help in the recovery process, restoring tissue quality and function. Time, it's really up to you. Like, I've got a couple of these tools around the house. Got one over on the living room stand and another one, this one's like at my desk. So that way if I'm on a call or between calls or something like that, I can just grab this for a minute or two, just like you would, you know, a foam roller next to your desk. Pop down, spend a couple minutes on it, mobilize, circulate. So, you know, a couple minutes here and there, something like 5 minutes maybe. I can even see my veins are starting to pop up in my forearm a little bit more. Noticing that as a sign of increased circulation. And it's really interesting because when I roll over this spot, I can really feel the pins and needles sensation going up that median nerve. But even just after doing this for a little bit, I wouldn't say it's a significant reduction, but it does feel better. And so one application, 1%, 100 days, 100%. So it already feels better. And the oil is nice, softens up the skin. Talking with a friend of mine, Tierra, about using castor oil and wrapping it in heat as a way to help improve the quality of this scar tissue. So that's something I'm going to look at too. I've never done that before. So shout out to Tierra. Thank you. I'm sure there's some other castor oil fans out there. But that's the scar side. And then essentially I'm going to do the same thing. I already put a little oil on the back of this arm. I was doing this just a little bit before the video and figured, hey, I might as well share this with you guys. So I don't need to oil up. But if you need to reapply, just grab a little bit more. You don't need very much, just enough so the blade slides nicely, buttery. And the back of the forearm, for me especially, it's typically more gritty on the muscles of the back of the arm there. So it feels good. I enjoy gua sha on the forearms quite a bit. It's one of my favorite spots to do. Getting a forearm massage also, just having someone palpate a lot of those tissues that just typically take a good amount of beating from weight training or, you know, any kind of physical labor, carrying stuff, chopping wood and carrying water. Getting some release in some of these sometimes neglected tissues is really nice. And for me, I'm trying to restore function of the entire arm, because you have to remember, because the arm has been broken, I've limited all use of my arm. So this elbow, the biceps, the triceps, the shoulder, the deltoid muscles, all the rotator cuff muscles, all of them are understimulated. They're underworked. They've been resting because I haven't been using this arm as much. So just getting overall blood flow to the entire arm is a great idea. I mean, there's not anything of this, you know, that I am off limits on. And obviously I want to stay within the threshold of comfort. Like if it's a little discomfort, if it's a little uncomfortable, that's okay. But I don't want to go into a point of pain. You can come in here and start to carve on some of the meat of the hand, coming in between each of these metacarpals here, the hand bones, just coming between each one of those, coming down. I know you guys don't have the best angle on this, but just giving you an idea. Oh, that feels really good. Coming in here and just kind of loosen that up. Another one, if anybody's had a hand massage, it's typically something that feels really good, because we just don't get in there into those little tiny muscles very often. So back of the forearm feels really good. Typically you'll hear the scraping go from distal to proximal, so farthest away to the center line. So I'm pulling towards the body. But you can go back and forth with brisk strokes. You can do long, slow strokes back and forth. And again, depending on where you're scraping and what kind of scraping method you're using and tool, you'll get a different outcome. So this was something I noticed for me especially, is actually the swelling around the higher parts of the arm, the upper arm, were creating impingement on the median nerve more proximally, higher up the chain, and that was actually causing an issue. Now I feel it really right through here, and that was always there from the surgery. It's really close, so I'm sure probably some nerve endings of the median nerve might have got cut or irritated or pressed on or impinged on, because now there's a giant piece of metal and 10 screws in there. Whatever the reason is, there's still a bit of an impingement that's running through the distal aspect of that median nerve. But I do notice that after the swelling has gone down around the elbow and up in this upper arm area, I've noticed that there was a decrease in the nerve pain and sensation. So just knowing that I'm going this full stream. You know, this whole arm hasn't been used as much. So anything I can do to massage it, scrape it, move it, circulate it, pump that water wheel is going to help. And you can see the arm is flushed with blood. It's warm to the touch. So I've got a lot of warm blood and oxygen and nutrients in that blood flowing into that area now after it's all been kind of opened up and stretched out a little bit. So it's a really, really good way to encourage tissue healing. And then I follow it with this guy. So this is called a voodoo flossing band. Shout out to Kelly Starrett. I've been using these for, gosh, it's 2022, 12 years, 11 years, since 2011. They're great. And they really are a simple, versatile tool. It's just this little elastic band, and essentially you wrap the area that's injured or that you're trying to promote healing or recovery or circulation in or joint mobility in. And I've used these to rehab multiple injuries. I've used it for shoulders, ankles was where I originally got this when I broke my ankle back in 2011. And I used that a lot to help with that process of recovery. But essentially the elastic band is going to create compression around the entire tissue wrapped. And the compression will help to kind of deaden the nerve endings, the sensation at the nerve endings. So you can actually move an area that would typically be a little bit more painful to go into a certain range of motion. You can kind of turn down that pain sensation stimulus by compression. So that's a way that we can work into some bits and corners that we might not be able to if we weren't using the band wrap to create that compression and decrease that pain sensation. So it allows us to get a little bit more of a stimulus at those end ranges of motion, restore optimal mobility, which is exactly what we want to do, right? So that's a good sign. Also, the grippy shear quality of this material kind of creates this twisty shear tissue sliding sensation mechanism. And it's like if you ever played as a kid the Indian rug burn, where you would twist somebody's arm, or a snake bite, you might hear it called that way. But it's just doing this. It creates this very specific type of sensation where it's like a hot, tearing, smearing shear force, as it would be called, abrasive force like this in biomechanics. And that is going to help break open and slide and get those tissues moving. I love the analogy. I can't remember who I got this from, probably Kelly Starrett, or I just love food, so of course, but like baklava or baklava. It's a pastry dessert that's like tons and tons of layers. Or you can think of like a baking powder biscuit. I think they're called baking soda biscuits, something like that, where it's like a lot of little layers that you can peel. That's how the tissues are, from the skin all the way down to the bone. There's tons of layers of tissues there. And so getting them to all kind of slide around and open up and become more pliable allows the tissues to function better, but also more oxygen and nutrients to flow between those layers more efficiently, right? You're sweeping the streets, so you've got better traffic flow, microcirculation, and so on. So really, it's a lot of the similar principles to the gua sha in that sense, but now we're creating, we've opened everything up and created the heat. Now we compress and we can actually elicit a compression response as well. So when we take the band off, all that tissue's opened up and we get a big rush of blood that fills that area that was just previously occluded, or blood flow was a bit restricted because of the compression. And that has its own effects as well. Occlusion training, BFR training, we're not trying to create any kind of hypertrophy stimulus with this in the rehab sense, but a lot of the mechanisms at play are similar physiologically. So basically all we do is wrap this around the area that you want to be compressed for 2 to 3 minutes, up to 5 minutes if you don't feel any nervous pain and tingling. If you do feel that impingement nerve pain and starting to fall asleep, take it off right away. It's too much. You don't want to have that sensation. You don't want to have pain. So wrap it at like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. You don't want to have it full max tension, but you want to be tight enough to where it's actually restricting some blood flow, occluding some blood, and creating a noticeable compression on the tissues that's not necessarily comfortable. So by the time you get to the 2, 3, 4, 5 minute mark, you want to take it off. You like, get this thing off in the end, then you want to shake it. After, shake it, rub it, encourage the blood flow to come back into that area. while you've got it on, closed chain and open chain kinetic chain movements, you know, especially for the wrist, I'm going to be trying to push it into the floor a little bit. I'm going to be doing some open chain controlled articular rotations, aka some slow motion joint circles with my wrist. But I'm going to do all of that with this on for a couple minutes until I feel it's the appropriate time to take it off, and then I'll just take it off and that's it. So this is just a quick little protocol for gua sha and voodoo flossing to help improve my range of motion, tissue quality, blood flow, circulation, and recovery. So then I can go load this thing up. And you can kind of follow a similar protocol to this for pretty much any area of the body. You want to improve tissue quality and circulation so that way you can promote recovery and then eventually progress to loading that tissue, those joints, to bring them back to full functioning capacity. So again, proximal distal, we go from the outside in with this. So I'm going to start at the wrist. It's a lot easier to do with two people. I've done this a lot of times, so I'll be able to do it just fine. But there's a bit of a pull and wrap motion that happens here with the band. So we go pull and then wrap. And that, when it shortens and pulls back, it kind of goes that rotational direction that kind of creates that shear, snake bite kind of tissue shear sensation that I was talking about. I'm trying to stay in the camera a little bit here. And I'm just going to wrap this whole area. That's a little tight. Come back a bit. Okay, you'll have to play with this to get it right. Okay, pull, wrap, pull, wrap, pull, wrap, pull, wrap, pull, wrap. Okay, it's a little tight. There we go. It's better. Okay, and I'm going to go all the way up this forearm since the whole thing needs some love, and see where we get here, and then we just tuck it in. Just take the rest of the band and tuck it under the outside. Ooh, that is tight. Not in a bad way, but man, you can feel it. Okay, so I've got this here, and I'm just gonna pick up the last one and then slide this under. Okay, so now it's on there. Now I'm just allowing the compression to do its thing. Just me extending like so creates quite a sensation down these radial extenders. So that's at my threshold of pain tolerance for extension, getting to right about there. If I try to crank back on it, I can feel it and it's quite uncomfortable, but it's not, I'm going only to the point where I'm like, okay, that's enough. I'm not going into that red light pain response. I'm staying at that yellow light cautionary, oof, uncomfortable, but I'm in control, and this feels as if it is tolerable. I'm not going past a point, a threshold that's actually causing more harm than good. Okay, so this is just open chain. This is just flexion and extension. Okay, and I can do a little radial and ulnar deviation, this motion. Okay, I don't have very much of it, especially with the band on, makes it a whole lot harder. Okay, starting to combine both movements together. The compression's really pulling my fingers in. It's shortening my flexors. Okay, but we're just playing with this for 2 minutes. Okay, I can start to close chain load it. Now, I don't have a good pre-post for you, but you can see I can actually get at least as far, if not farther, seemingly a noticeable difference there, right? In how much when I was doing it without the band on, I wasn't actually giving quite a bit of pressure there to load it, but it does get quite uncomfortable and painful when I do this without the band on. With the band on, I'm actually just feeling more of a stretch. I don't feel that impingement back here. Maybe because it's putting the joints in a better position, maybe because of that compression on the nerves. Like, I still feel it if I really get back there in that little pinch point area of the back of the wrist when I go into loaded extension, but it's better than it was without the band. So you can see I can kind of crank on it without eliciting a pain response. So I can actually get, oh man, that feels really good. Manually taking my wrist into flexion there. That's good stuff. I can feel all sorts of tissues getting stretched and pinched and worked in a good way. That feels really good. Okay, so we're at about probably 2 minutes here, maybe 3. Okay, ooh, jeez, those supinators. Oh my gosh, I can really feel they're weak. So they haven't been used. It's pinned down and I'm trying to contract it and the muscle can't go because of the pinch, so it's really giving me a burn. Woo! Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Okay, we take this off. And you'll see it's gonna go from white to red, pink when all the blood flushes back in there. I like to encourage that by just very lightly rubbing the outside of the skin to encourage that blood flow to come back in. Okay, so that's just a basic right there. I mean, that's talking it through. You can do this in 10 minutes, right? 5 minutes of gua sha and 5 minutes of the voodoo flossing band. And you could do that multiple inputs per day. You know, do that 1, 2, 3 times a day. More frequency at a lower intensity is going to likely elicit more of an adaptation because it's not a super strong stimulus. You want to get it more frequently. So I'm definitely feeling the muscles here sore on this radial side, but that's also where the plate is and where the break was. So just, you know, mindful as I progress here and start to load this up more. And the tissue recovery stuff really goes a long way. Red light's also another great one, putting the red light here for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, just allowing that to improve the circulation and help with the healing of the tissue and quality of the tissue. So just little modalities, little things that you can play with to help with your recovery. Low cost, no cost tools, right? These are both low cost. You've got a butter knife, $0, or a $2 gua sha, you know, stone or rock. You can use whatever you want. The voodoo band's $20. I've had this one for years. So easy ways to keep up on your recovery and do some of the rehab yourself to improve your tissue quality and your rehabilitation process. I hope that helps. Enjoy, guys.